Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We'll allow more people to join and kick off in about a couple of minutes. We'd love to hear from you all. If you'd like to introduce yourselves in the chat, feel free. Let us know where you're calling in from. And what about this topic is interesting or excites you. We're looking forward to the session. Oh, it's great to see so many people introducing themselves. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. If you have just joined, we're just waiting a couple more minutes for everyone else to join. And feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from, and let us know why you're interested or what excites you about the topic today. All right, I think we'll give it another minute or so. I still see people joining in. Thanks, everyone. It's great to hear from you all here, where you're all coming in from. We have people joining from all over the world. Wonderful. All right, I think I'll start kicking it off. I'll give a brief intro while everyone else joins. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to moderate this discussion on leadership, momentum, and resilience in times of change. I'm Natasha Kennedy. I'm an executive search consultant with Oxford HR. I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. We are a global leadership consultancy specializing in executive search and organizational development in the for-purpose space. We work really closely with nonprofits and social impact leaders around the world, supporting leaders like you all to build strong, resilient teams. I've worked with senior leaders and executives both in the private sector during my time in HR at Deloitte, as well as now in the nonprofit and social impact space. And I've seen firsthand how leadership is tested during times of upheaval. Right now, as we all know, many nonprofit leaders are facing unprecedented challenges due to the major funding cuts arising from the US government efficiency efforts. We are all having to make tough decisions. We're all having to reimagine strategies and maintain team morale, all while staying true to our mission. And leadership isn't just about managing the immediate crisis, as we know, it's about guiding people through uncertainty in a way that's going to build resilience and long-term impact. And today, our panelists, who are experts in organizational change, in leadership development and coaching, are going to share their insights on how to sustain team momentum, how to foster resilience and lead with confidence during these uncertain times. Our goal is for you to leave with practical strategies to navigate your own uncertainty and help you build resilient teams of your own and maintain momentum through this time of change. And I hope the discussion provides valuable takeaways for your own leadership journey. Before we dive in, a quick note on our format. Our panelists will have a conversation for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to open up the floor for Q&A. We really want to give as much time to you and hear your questions and help answer them. So put your questions in the Q&A box here, and we'll attempt to address as many as we possibly can, and we'll aim to wrap up just a couple of minutes before the hour. Thank you. Thanks again so much for joining, and I'd like to hand it over now to our panelists to introduce themselves before we kick off the discussion. And I'll hand it over to Mary first. Thanks.
Jambo, good afternoon, good evening. Where I am in Nairobi, it's evening. And Jambo from my part of the world means hi, and everybody says Jambo back. My name is Mary Jenga Muremi, and I'm calling in from Nairobi, Kenya. I operate and work as one of the coaches and audit consultants for Oxford HR. I love what I do. I think it's a passion because I never get tired. I can coach, and I can do organizational culture change wherever it finds me. And I'm so glad that I'm being one of the panelists having this conversation, which has personally affected me and also so many people that I know. So welcome on board, and looking forward to a real great conversation.
Thanks so much for joining. We're happy to have you here. I'll hand it over to Herzen to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Natasha. Jumbo Mary, hi. Also great to join this conversation. I think, Natasha, as you said, very, very relevant topic. I'm an organizational psychologist based in South Africa, sunny South Africa. I specialize in leadership assessment, leadership development, and executive coaching, but we also work at team level and organizational level, change management, organizational design and development work. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. But I did grow up 40 kilometers from Kruger, so whenever I get a chance, I'm out there. I'm also quite passionate about conservation, and try and spend as much time there as possible. I'm a husband and father of one. I've got a boy, and looking forward to the engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to kick off with a couple of questions. And as we all know, this is going to be more like a discussion than a interrogation. I'll start off with Mary. Mary, with recent global events and geopolitical shifts disrupting many organizations worldwide, to what extent do you think leaders foresaw these changes? Do you think they were actively listening to early signals that could have helped them prepare?
Thank you, Natasha. I think from my own experience, they saw the changes coming, but not to the extent that we now know in March 2025. Last year, I had a couple of USAID mission work that I was doing, including the staff for USAID. They didn't see it coming. And most of the leaders that I work with in USAID supported programs, the notion of making America great again it happened before and it's going to happen. So maybe there was some little talk about probably climate change will be deprioritized. Maybe this would be deprioritized, but we actually didn't know, and a lot of people didn't know that there was going to be a lot of deprioritization, including USAID itself. And for me, this brings to the question: how well are we listening to the external environment? This brings me back to I think February 2020, when COVID came and it was so far away in China. And I think this one also very far away. It didn't quite seem to be coming, but I think for us is how well did we see it coming? What meaning did we draw from making America great again? And now that we know that it was actually going to be so much so, not so much about who we are and the work that we have been doing with the funding from USAID, I think for me, our leadership needs to probably begin to think about what does this mean and what models, what thoughts, what ideas do we have in case there is little funding or no funding at all, or there is absolute closure. And I would say from, I think it's Winston Churchill said that never let a good crisis go to waste. So I'm hoping that with this conversation this evening, this morning, that we'll actually begin to see the opportunities that come here that have been brought by this. So my question is, did we listen? Did we see it? Did we change anything in our organizations? And I think to a large extent, a lot of leaders didn't see it to this extent. Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you. Herzen, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I love what Mary's saying is never let a good crisis go to waste. Love that quote. From my perspective, I think the old cliche that the only thing that's constant is change. However, it goes against our human nature. Our human nature looks for safety and it looks for certainty. And I think that's duality of what we're facing. I think when we think of leaders, we expect that leaders would be the ones that would see the crisis before it happens. We see the leaders as the individuals that steer the ship. And a big part of leadership is obviously being able to deal with ambiguity and complexity. But as Mary said, I don't think we can expect anyone to really see the future. And I mean, if you could, you'd be a very, very rich person. So I think we also need to just remember that leaders are still human. They're also still taken by surprise, but their role obviously entails understanding complexity, understanding when we are faced with a crisis, and making sure that they successfully navigate the ship through very, very stormy seas that we're facing right now.
For sure. Thank you. Hudson, did you notice any patterns in how leaders initially responded to the crisis?
Yes, yeah, I think our human nature is one of when going through a process of change, the emotions that we experience are very similar to I think the emotions or those stages of loss that they talk about. I've got a slide that shows a bit of that emotional roller coaster that people go through during times of crisis and change. And if we have that, we can maybe bring that up. But I think the general trend that I've saw kind of follows this curve, in that the initial reaction, the initial stage is just shock, and kind of just making sense of what happened. And most of the time, this is a very emotional response. So I think the audience alluded to a sense of how we're feeling with the current state. And I think that's probably still where many of us, many leaders are still just trying to make sense. And also just grappling with the immediate emotion that goes with that shock, the anxiety and the fear, etc. We tend to then want to deny the situation or make it not seem as bad as what it is. And once we start to realize, but this is the new reality, or this is impact me, or I am someone who's potentially at risk of losing their job, I think that's where the anger, the frustration, emotions will play out, and that can really get us into a very, very dark place and a dark state. And I also see this with leaders. I think leaders often are faced with existential questions in times like this, in terms of am I doing a good job? Am I a good leader? Do I have the capability of leading the team through this change? But I think in managing this and getting through this, and also the type of work that we do, what ultimately happens is that we need to start somewhere. We need to start to try, make a decision, have a go at a potential solution, or work at how are we dealing with this new reality that we're facing, and ultimately through that process, if you are able to break through and go through that low times and the dark times and break through, most of the time what we see and experience is that people are stronger for it. And Mary alluded to the crisis that still very recent in our minds as well, with COVID and the trauma that people experience through that, and we often rely on those past traumas to help us face and deal with new crises that arise, similar to the one that we're facing right now.
Mary, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I think this is now the new norm. I know some leaders have been saying, oh, we can't wait to get out of this crisis. I don't think we'll ever pack crisis somewhere in a box and go and open at any other time. But crisis, we're always moving in and out of a crisis. And I think for me is, as leaders, we know that crisis is going to come. Are we ready for it? And I think we have very different skills, especially on leading through a crisis when things are so tough and it's urgent and needs to be done, but also leading out of a crisis. So for me is COVID was one, and I'm sure we have many other crises happening in our own organizations. But are we building our own resilience? Because we know crisis will come. What muscle are we building so that we can be able to lead after those crises way longer? So they're going to come, and we are going to be leading out of so many crises. This is not the only one. There are others that are coming.
Thank you, important. Natasha. That's really the key. Yeah, thank you. Actually, that leads me to my next question for you, Mary. What are some practical strategies that leaders can use to build that resilience and keep teams engaged, keep them informed?
Right. I think I love this one, and I'm sure you must have heard it. It's already very tired. All of us have flown, and we are told, in case of an emergency, do what? Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself first before you attend to those who are next to you. And I think for me, you can't lead without energy. You can't lead when you're afraid. You can't lead when you have no help. And therefore, for me, the first thing as a leader, knowing what happens when there's a crisis. Some of us are very extroverted. We go towards the crisis. Some of us are introverted and maybe want to close ourselves in. And but this is the time that the teams should see you. And therefore, for me, is get to know yourself. If you're introverted, I think it's important that people need to see you, to communicate, to tell them, even when you don't know. Communicate, communicate, and over-communicate. Take care of yourself. Self-care, I know, again, there are some of us who are very good in that. We work out every morning, we meditate, we have spiritual leaders, we talk, we sing, we dance. Find out what is it that works for you, but please take care of yourself. Don't put on other people's masks before you do it. The other thing is communicate. Even if you don't know, just tell them, I have no idea what information I can give you right now. You can even tell them, I'm telling you this today, but maybe tomorrow I will probably change it, because it's very volatile. They will love you for telling them the truth than hiding. The other thing is, and I saw this happening this last week, a leader who went so quickly to make some changes because they were afraid. They were told, get people out, and people were fired. And immediately another correspondent came and said, hire them back, and they were hired. And then they were told, no, you shouldn't have hired them. So again, what is my state of mind? Am I making decisions with fear? And if you're afraid, then can that fear be used as a fuel to help you think about what are the options? The leader didn't look very pretty when she had to call people in and out and in and out, and you know all the different country labor laws. And I think they're in some trouble now because they have had to reinstate some people and asked others to go because of that fear. I've talked about communication. I've talked about self-care. I've also said, please speak less. Listen more. Speak less, and then question everything. Please be willing to change anything, including yourself. The things that you don't do often, please try to do them. And then don't let fear take hold of you. And not remember, you're also not alone. There are other leaders who are going through this together with you. And this is the time that you reach out to them to be able to, have some ideas in terms of what to move along with. So again, don't be afraid to let some certain things go. Don't be afraid to also pivot. As I said, don't waste the crisis. What are those areas in your programs that you can pivot? Who is that staff that you always wanted to give at some challenging work and now they can probably handle 2 or 3 assignments? Who is that staff that you actually really wanted to ask to leave, but you didn't have an opportunity? Again, find ways of pivoting. That's what I can say right now, Natasha. Thank you.
That pivoting is crucial, isn't it? I think everyone's just trying to do that. And yeah, it's about building sort of more longer term strategies and then getting ahead of it for next time as well. Hudson, did you want to add anything?
Thanks, Natasha. I think Mary covered as well. The point around awareness is central to this. So I think self-awareness, as she mentioned, it all starts there, and just knowing what's the emotions that I'm currently experiencing. And example of having a conversation with a leader a couple of weeks ago that said they just have nothing left in the tank and they need a day. And I applaud that. I mean, that vulnerability to say, but this is really tough on me. And I also see that it's tough on others, but I just need to just take some time. I think that's crucial. And then obviously just having empathy and also knowing that other people are going through similar challenges, and like I shared, the emotive curve, similar to loss. We all deal with that at different times. So if you're leading a team, you need to be aware that different people might be in different stages of processing, and just have empathy for that, just have understanding for what other people might be going through. And maybe last point, I think the thing around community is so important that Mary touched on, and it is interesting to see the amount of people that join a session like this, and just a sense that you're not alone in going through this. And I think that's my understanding, at least, of part of the reason why we're doing this. And it will be really interesting to see, once we get a sense of the questions and comments people make, what they are experiencing. And I think that's an important point as well, knowing that you're not alone in this.
That's huge. I agree. Am I on mute? Am I on mute? No, I'm not on mute. Just, yes, knowing that you're not alone, and that so much can be said for sort of just talking and sharing and reaching out to your network, which is what I think a lot of people are doing, and that's why we're here today too. So hopefully it's helpful. My last question then, before we open it up to Q&A, and this can be for Hetson. Having worked closely with organizations navigating change, what key lessons stand out to you in terms of leadership behaviors, decision-making, long-term adaptation?
Yeah, difficult to pick just one, but I think if the thought that comes to mind for me right now, working with organizations going through difficult periods like we do now, for me, true leadership of individuals is often shown during tough times. It's easy to lead when it's easy going, but it's during times of crisis that we really rely a lot on our leaders, and where leaders are tested. And as I've mentioned, if one can build that resilience through these difficult times, that often becomes defining. I think when you talk to leaders and they at the end of their careers have a lot more wisdom, and you ask them questions, reflective questions, they will all often talk around difficult periods and difficult times, and the lessons that they've learned through trials and tribulations. And even though it's difficult when you're in a tough spot, I find some comfort in that, knowing that it's really these difficult times that that will us and often brings out the best in us.
So true. There's parallels to so many other things, actually, that there's times of those hardest. It's kind of like parenting. It's really easy to parent a kid when they're really well and doing really well. The real pedal to the metal is when they're having tough times, is when you can really show that strength. Yeah, Mary, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I was actually thinking about collective leadership here. We have been speaking a lot about the leader, but also remember, if you work in an organization, I'm sure you have a senior leadership team or a senior management team. And sometimes the focus is so much about that leader. And for me, where is the space for adaptive leadership and collective leadership? And how well do we know each other, especially in terms of crisis? Someone said that you know the real person when they have been left by the bus or the train. Do you know each other really well, that you know when you're in a crisis, who is that one person who ran, who is that one person who will be bold enough, who is that one person that actually will be empathetic and can actually hear. And I think last year I worked with an SMT in one of the countries in African region, and we happened to have done their psychometrics as a team. And it was so amazing how they have now shown up during this crisis, that everybody's hands were on the deck. And the national director said it was so different the way they were leading before, because they knew who was able to do what when. And the whole team, they spoke in one voice. Whatever decisions they made as a result of these changes, who is going to go, what programs to cut, what funding to cut, the team was so well in sync. And what is the reason? This assessment had made them get to know each other a little bit more. And they had also been able to kind of work through their difficult conversations. And she said, I couldn't believe that this is my same SMT. And I thought it was a quick intervention with the team. But again, how much do you trust your team? Can you be able to jump out of a plane on a parachute the way you are? Or would you be able to trust all of them? Or there are some you'd say, I don't think I want to be held by Gaten because he might let my hand loose. So for me, are we trusting enough? Do I know my team well? Do we know how we work during a crisis so that we can be able to leverage on that? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that just talks a little bit to empowering your teams, doesn't it? So decentralizing some of that decision making, know who has which strengths and how you can really be stronger as a whole. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really great discussion, and we're going to continue the discussion, and we're going to open it up now for Q&A. Let's just have a look here, and we're going to try and get to as many questions as possible. I need to bring up my screen here. Hold on. All right, let's see. Here's the first question. How do you handle different reactions from different team members that expect the uncertainty to affect them in different ways, especially given their differences in the ability to be resilient? Let me know if you want me to reread that. And it's open to either of you who would like to answer.
I'll have a stab at it, Natasha. But if you could maybe just read it again, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. How do you handle different reactions from different team members that expect the uncertainty to affect them in different ways, especially given their differences in their ability to be resilient?
Yeah, that's such a good question and a good point, because when you lead a team, their ability to deal with crisis and their own individual resilience will differ. You have some individuals that that are more resilient than others. And I think one thing we shouldn't lose sight of often are also individual personal circumstances. Often our resilience can be affected by our own personal circumstances. Just an example: if you're a breadwinner or a single parent, and the amount of pressure that's on you might be different from someone who's not in that position. So it's important to take those things into consideration. But we cannot control how people respond and how people react. I think that's still an important point. I think as a leader, your responsibility is one towards the team, and making sure that you get the team through difficulty, and sometimes that means that you can't get too lost in individuals' responses. So my suggestion, my answer to that would be is trying to find the balance of making sure that you have an awareness and that you have empathy what people are going through, and knowing that a single approach is not gonna work. You need to adjust to different individuals. That's, by the way, what we call situational leadership, and why situational leadership is such an important characteristic and trait that leaders should have. but at the same time, not lose a sense of where you need to go and how you need to navigate through the difficulties. And that part of your role is sometimes having to make difficult decisions. Maybe just a last point on that is in making difficult decisions, the how you do that is often more important than what you do, and making sure that if you have to make a difficult decision and there are people that get cut from the team as an example, as a result, that you do it with the utmost sensitivity and humanity that one possibly can. It's part of the difficult things that leaders need to be able to do.
Yeah, super difficult. I will keep what I'm going to say here is I'm going to have you both, if you just want to add anything, just unmute yourself. If not, I'll just continue going with the questions.
I think what I could add here is empathy, as Gatsen has said. And I think this is one thing that even if we don't have it, if you can be able to see the other person as a human being like you are, they have certain struggles, they may not be understanding, even not being able to solve their solutions, but show them that I'm here, I'm listening, and I care. And I think that's the gift that our leadership can give to the people that we lead. Sometimes they don't see us because we are so far away, but are we able to come close? When your child is crying, we tend to go and stoop and talk to them right on the face and tell them, I love you. When did you actually last tell some of your workers that I love you and I appreciate you? Thank you so much for doing this. I know it's difficult, but me too, it has affected me. And I think that's the language that we need to start beginning to speak as leaders. I know it's difficult, but I would wish that some of us tomorrow will actually tell your staff, I love you. Not love you, but I love you. And I appreciate what you do. That tells it all. Thank you.
So moving. I couldn't agree more. And it's so hard, and we can't underestimate how meaningful it is to hear those words, or even just a thank you. If some people find it more difficult to say I love you. But yeah, just thanking people. And I hear you, I see you. I think it's so powerful. All right, next question. Beyond these interesting tips and pointers for increasing resilience, what is the best current research and literature, especially pertaining to organizational resilience?
Maybe I can talk from my own experience, and this could be somewhere in literature. And I think that is from, just trying to check who posted that. I think for me is, first of all, what is this resilience that we are talking about? The football or the basketball, every time it bounces, it tends to come up. And I think that's what we are saying, that we can actually fall and bounce back. How then can we build our own organization resilience? And here I'm actually looking at, especially because most of us, I think, we are coming from social impact organizations. Are we thinking about even the people that we serve? Are they going to be able to bounce back after the stop to work order? What are we doing at that time? Because this organization that you represent serves a community somewhere. Are they going to be able to survive? Are they going to be able to bounce back? So for me, I would love that we pick it up all the way. What skills, what competencies, what are we leaving behind? Are we leaving behind skills that people can use way after? And I think this resilience, we need to speak about it as soon as we go into those communities and find out what will happen when we are not there. Are we leaving those skills? Are we leaving those competencies? Are we leaving their ways of working? I know several organizations that actually, even if they may not have a funder, they will survive. That's number one. The other part of the organizational resilience is, who are your real allies? Who is this that we're in partnership with? Are they sharing our values? Such that they will not just say, tomorrow we are closing and we go. Because if our connection, if our partnership is about our shared values as organizations, I think there is some bit that we can leverage there in terms of that resilience. And of course, culture, organizational culture is a big part of this. how are we enabling our teams to actually be able to speak and co-create and foster communication that can actually continually build the organization? More often than not, some teams could be seeing things not working very well and they're not able to communicate because they're afraid. What kind of a culture are we building as an organization or as leaders so that everybody can actually speak about, I see this, I think this is not working, this is gonna work, and we can all be co-creators of our organizations. So again, empowering our employees to be able to see how that future look like and what we can be able to do. Of course, there are many things that we do. The normal contingency plans that you do all the time, hoping that you have a plan A and plan B, contingency plan, hopefully that if this one doesn't work, this can work. I think that also works. But also think about even your own, your board members, for example. They're not going to be there forever. Some of you are board members. Do you even have a pipeline that you know for sure if Gatsen is no longer your board member, someone else will fill in? Another way of resilience is, do we have succession plans? Who is growing into your role? How many people are you growing? I know there are leaders who actually grow 2 or 3 people at the same time, and there is funding for it to prepare people to become. So those are some of the areas I could speak about, and I think they would be able to help us bounce back in case of this crisis. It's not only financial, it is people, it is programming, and it is skills. But also think about the resilience with communities where we work.
Yeah, Natasha, if I can add to that, it's such a good question. Leaders are readers, so what you keep your mind busy with and what you're reading is important. So really good question, and difficult one to answer because there's so much good literature out there, and it's not just literature. I mean, the great thing these days with YouTube, access to short video clips. I often when I feel a bit down or in need of encouragement, I jump onto YouTube and listen to a couple of motivational videos, and that often gets me going. So that's something that could be helpful. But I want to actually go back to something that's a little bit older, and trying to think through some of the things I've been reading recently. What actually came to mind when I thought about that question was Jim Collins' Good to Great, and the concept of really knowing what it is that you do well and making sure that as a business you focus on that. And it's a really good business concept. And I think especially during times of crisis, it often reminds us, what do we need to shed? What are the things that we're exploring that might not be the things that serve the best interests of the organization, and really defining for ourselves what is it at the core of what we do, and if we've got limited amount of resources, how can we maximize that and really become the best at doing that and delivering that. And I think that's an important principle. And back to the point of not wasting a good crisis, I think often crises force us to do that. But in my mind, that's a great principle for building a resilient organization. I think it's so relevant and topical. When we were doing our own strategy end of last year, the last quarter of last year, and one of the immediate things that we needed to do was to actually sit and consider, well, given the first quarter of this year, does it change anything that we said we were going to do in November, and just taking stock and reevaluating. And some of the things that I spoke to now, I think sits at the heart of that is making sure that what we said and what we agreed to, the vision that we created, we're still holding true to that. It might not play out in the timeline that we expected, or we might need to make a few adjustments in the way in which we see we could get there. But often, if we can look at each other and say that the fundamentals still hold true, it often tells us that we're on the right track.
Thank you. Yeah, focusing on what your organization does well. As you said, sometimes a crisis forces you to do that, and I think that many in the space are forcibly having to do that. And And in a way, you know, it's not the way we would all have wanted it to happen, but hopefully we can project 5 years on, and perhaps we're going to be in a better place for it. Difficult to say. All right. How can leadership empower their teams? And this is talking more around psychological safety, probably about speaking up. Who'd like to take that?
I can take a first hand at that. I think the psychological safety is a big one, and usually that is the elephant in the room. Our leadership mindset. What is your leadership mindset? Is it that they know and you also know, or they don't know and you know? And I think for me, that's it. If your leadership mindset that these are people that are equal partners in this flight, you could be the pilot, but everybody else has a real great skill. Therefore, you can delegate to them without having to fear that it will not be done the way it would be done, because anyhow, it will not be done the way you would, because you're all very different. For me, it is effective delegation and trust. How much do you trust me that I may not do it as you would, but you trust me that I'll deliver to the best of my ability. Psychological safety is also a big one, that I can actually speak without fear. Even when I don't know, I'll not be judged. Even when your leader doesn't know, you not say, but why is he the leader? He doesn't know. It's okay not to know. And that's a gift. What are the ways that you can empower our teams? I think the big elephant again in the room is usually the culture. How well do we give people permission to actually make mistakes and learn from them and unlearn from them? How is your culture today? Are you a leader that when a person comes to you and they want to know something and you ask them, what do you think? Instead of telling you, oh, go and do ABCD. But when you tell them, what do you think? They will have a completely new confidence, because they know that you trust what they're going to say. So for me, that promoting issues around autonomy. Ask me to go until you tell me to stop. I think that also really builds trust in teams, because you know that your leader trusts you. One time when I was working many years ago with ActionAid, my country director came and told me, Mary, just go and do it. I know you know. And I felt like I was given wings to fly, and I did it. Things that I had never done before. So what language are you speaking to your team so that they can go until you tell them to stop?
I was hoping that you would respond, Mary, because I know you're so passionate about this topic. The one little bit I'd like to add is maybe just the talking around the topic of vulnerability and the importance of leaders also being vulnerable, and the importance of that informing the trust that Mary mentioned. And I think often as leaders, we think that the expectation is that we have all the answers. And in some cases, we think it's inappropriate to apologize or inappropriate to show weakness. And in reality, we build greater trust and we are able to connect better with our staff if we ourselves can show vulnerability. And obviously, that's also something that one doesn't balance. But for me, that's maybe the one bit I can add to what Mary mentioned.
And now you have provoked me to even add more. I think there are very, very many areas that our leadership could actually lead into. How many of us recently had a very healthy conversation bordering on conflict with your team? Sometimes some of us say, oh, I don't do very well with conflict. Please don't waste a conflict. In fact, it's almost like don't waste a crisis. Conflicts are beautiful for teams. And here I'm not talking about aggression, but differences in ideation. That does actually also help build effective teams, because someone will come, they'll make a mistake and they will say, hey, I didn't know I've made a mistake. And you're allowing that space for learning. But also that trust is that I can actually be vulnerable to say, I have no clue. Who has a clue? and you'll not be judged. Issues around, are we communicating enough? Are we accountable enough? Are we focusing on results? But also feedback. Have you ever asked your team to just tell you what they think about your leadership without sugarcoating it? Because it's going to help you. Someone said that if someone tells you that you have big ears and another one tells you tomorrow you have big ears, then prepare yourself a sandal, because actually you're a donkey, you have big ears. So sometimes we have to actually ask our staff, please tell me if I have big ears so that I can prepare to buy myself a sandal, because I'm actually not what I think I am. Feedback is critical.
Can I add to feedback, Mary? I think very, very practical management principle is just asking your staff, what do you need from me? What support do you need from me? And taking the time to have a one-on-one conversation, because individuals have different needs. And it's very simple. Ask people, ask them what they need, and you'll find more often than not, they will tell you.
I agree with that. And, sometimes team settings are one area to have everyone voice their concerns, but also know that or concerns or ideas, not just concerns, but some people are more comfortable in that one-to-one setting too. So just having something scheduled, they know that they're going to have once a week or whatever it is, once every two, a chance to air whatever they want to offer or share. Okay, next question. From your experience, what are the main effective strategies for maintaining leadership momentum when faced with unexpected disruptions? And how can leaders ensure their teams remain aligned and motivated during such times?
I think we've touched on elements of this, and part of it is the reevaluation of whether the plans that we have and the strategies that we have for where we want to be is relevant, and do we really know and understand what it is that we do. But I think if the answer to that question is yes, and like I said, then you know that you're on the right track. During times like this, it often requires you just to think. Let's talk around funding, for example, and funding cuts that we've seen at a global level.
Hertzen, we're having connectivity issues, I think. Mary, do you also see that?
Yes, he's having connectivity issues. Yes.
I think he's frozen.
Yeah.
Should we see if it comes back? Do you want to chime in and see if we get him back again, hopefully?
Right. So still on the effective strategies for maintaining leadership momentum.
Yeah, if you have anything to add, if not, there's a couple of follow-up questions to that. Yeah.
All right. I think for me is maintaining momentum is like ensuring that nothing stops, that you're communicating, that you're listening to the teams, that you're also actually speaking about even successes within this crisis, because sometimes under crisis, we don't often see whether there is any success. If you go through the day and people have been able to deliver some work, please celebrate it. So communicate a lot. Find out, are there some quick wins even in this crisis? And also, even if it's just having coffee together with the team, for me, that would be the kind of behavior I would be looking at there to really remain ensuring that the staff are motivated, because a lot of this is about the fear. Will we lose our jobs? What will happen to me? And I think for me is including, do we have services that you're aligned to or assigned to that staff can actually go for therapy? Are there people or other professionals that can be able to support the team? Sometimes you don't, some organizations have it, others don't. So what other mechanisms do you have that can be able to support the team? Because as a leader, you may not have all the skills. but you have trusted friends and colleagues and professionals who can be able to handle that.
Sorry,
we lost you, but
Natasha.
hopefully you're back. Yeah.
I hope so. What I was trying to say is adapting to the change, I think, is one of the fundamental skills for a leader to have, and being creative in the way that one goes around solving these problems that you're facing. That's why leaders will not be replaced by artificial intelligence. It's really in times like this where one needs to maintain the focus, but also come up with creative solutions. Like Mary mentioned, you don't have to do it on your own, but facilitate that process of finding creative solutions and making sure that you stay the course. I think that's a big role of leadership in times like this. Adapt, essentially.
Yeah, I like that. I love that idea of celebrating little wins, because it can be really hard to see during these times, and they're so important. All right, next from the same person, I believe. How can leaders strike the right balance between being decisive in the face of sudden change and taking the time to build resilience within their teams and organizations?
It's a fantastic question, but the insight in the question in itself, I think, is very powerful, because it is all about striking that balance. And often when I talk to leaders that's managed that successfully, they would say that a lot of it is intuitive. A lot of it is knowing when to drive, when, and also when to hold back a little bit. So I think it's an excellent point in that you need to, during these crises, find the right balance. But you essentially draw on all of your leadership capability to find that answer, and some of it, not all of it, is intuitive, and some of it is also, to Mary's previous point, is checking your intuition with others, and just being able to use the collective and the resource that you have around you to verify whether you are striking the right balance in either moving forward or just holding back and pausing for a moment. Don't know if you'd like to add, Mary.
I think that's good enough. Again, there is no perfect balance. When I was thinking about this, it's like you're juggling very many balls in the air. Some may be falling, but for me, it's to really think as a leader, what is my most critical ball that I must ring fence that it doesn't? Some of it could be the staff well-being, that I need to ensure that my staff are stable and they're well taken care of. The other one could be we don't have all the finances. Maybe I may have to put them on half salary, which is fine, probably, and then decide how do I support them to go through this crisis. And I think juggling different balls, some of them for sure, they will fall. And some people will be affected by this. But it's what are you going to do with those who are affected? Do they feel you as a human being as they were living? Are they living taller, knowing that they have served to the last minute? It's only maybe the funding that has come to an end or some crisis. I think for me is that even how are we doing the exit with those who are exiting from us? Are they feeling they can always come back? Or are they saying I'll never get back there? And I think this is where the human beingness of our leadership comes in, empathy.
You touched on something, Mary. Sorry, Natasha, just triggered with me. I found a lot of solace in this. I had an executive that I reported to that was phenomenal, a big mentor for me. And he said, as a leader, you're obviously paid to make decisions. And Mary, to your point, is you can never get it perfect. You're not going to be right all the time. And he said to me, if he gets it right 51% of the time, he sees that as a win. So as long as you find that balance more often than not, you will find that you're moving in the right direction. You're not going to get it right every single time. But you obviously don't know when you're in that situation.
And I also know leaders who make difficult decisions and they close the doors and cry because they're human beings like us. And sometimes we also fail to actually see the human beings in them, can we also be reaching out and finding out, how are you doing? How are you doing it during this crisis? Because they are coming out to ask, and sometimes it's very, very difficult for them.
And knowing when you've made a decision and it doesn't work out. So I've also seen organizations demise when leaders took a course of action and never wanted to admit that that was the wrong path, or they didn't get that balance right. Often the first step forward is to turn around.
Actually, that leads to the next question, which could you share, do you have any examples of leaders who have successfully turned moments of crisis into an opportunity or growth?
I will give one global one and maybe one local one. Do you remember the Swiss knife? The Swiss knife, I think it was the most sought for tool for Christmas gifts until 9/11. Everybody, every child, every home was, I think the biggest gift that was exchanged was the Swiss knife. After 9/11, what happened? If you remember at your airport, there are so many Swiss knives that are tucked somewhere in some corner because nobody is allowed to go with any sharp objects. And they managed to actually turn around the business because it was shattered one day, all gone. And they do other stuff right now. What are we saying? What is that opportunity out there that you can actually say? I'll give an example of one of the local social impact organizations in Kenya. They started knowing that donor funding could go and it's seasonal. And what they actually did is they turned those moments into what can we do with communities to leave lasting change. So communities themselves identify where our resources, what can we do with these resources, what skills can we learn so that we can actually continue using these resources. And even right now, 26 years later, the organization is growing stronger and stronger. And they actually say, how can we grow our own communities using their own resources to build this resilience and sustainability? You can look wherever you work and actually say, hey, what is it that I can build that would leave these communities better for good? Because they're using what they already have. I can give the name, but yes, they're there.
Thank you. Hudson, do you have anything to add? We're coming to the end of our time here, so just need to wrap up.
Yeah, sure. There's so many examples, Natasha. I think the one we always use in change management is Kodak, that never adapted. That's the big one of a failed organization. But I think whenever you talk to a successful leader, their narrative would be very much centered around dealing with crisis situations. That's the one thing that I've found, and that also rings true then at organization level and at individual level. If you talk to someone just around their own life and provide you with a life story, often their identity are really crafted around and their purpose in life is crafted around crisis.
It really rings true. It really rings true. Looking at the time, I think we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much to our panelists. I think we've learned a lot during this conversation. While change is inevitable, strong leadership, decisive action, human-centered approach, empathy can help all of us navigate the turbulent times. Both in corporate and nonprofit, the most effective leaders are those who are transparent, they listen, they rely on their teams, and they invest in their own long-term resilience. So it's really wonderful that so many people have shown up today in that effort. So I wanted to just thank our panelists for sharing your really valuable insights, and to the audience for your participation. Sorry, we couldn't get through to all the questions. If you'd like to find out how we can help, if we can help you, I believe that we'll have the information in the chat box here at Oxford HR. We're also going to be sharing a quick survey. It shouldn't take more than about 4 minutes. We'd really appreciate to hear from you to see if there are any services that you need right now, that we can help you with. We're just taking a pulse on that. And just to everyone, keep going. It's a really difficult time, and we're all going to get through it, and staying together, listening people out, hearing people's advice, offering advice. We're all there for everyone. So thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you at the next event.